We're in Moscow tonight. We're here to interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. We'll be doing that soon. There are risks to conducting an interview like this, obviously, so we thought about it carefully over many months. Here's why we're doing it. First, because it's our job. We're in journalism. Our duty is to inform people. 2 years into a war that's reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed. They have no real idea what's happening in this region, here in Russia or 600 miles away in Ukraine.
Hello my dears, I am Michael. I live in Paraguay since 2021 and I'm not in Paraguay because in Germany is all well or that in Paraguay is all well. But now in this video for me it's important to stand together with Tucker Carlson with his message. And first I must explain something. First of all, I was told a while ago not to make videos in English because my English was too bad. Okay, it will probably be like that, but I can't get around it here. This is how I use Google Translate to help with this video. Today is the 8th of February 2024 in the afternoon here in Paraguay with a blue sky and fantastic clouds. I'm standing outside on the ground from my rented house in the garden and I want to show you in what situation I am. But especially I want to show you that I think that it is right what Tucker Carlson do. And I hope my English now is good enough to be understood from you. I would like to side with Tucker Carlson. He has now done what he announces in the following video. But let's let him have this say here.
We're in Moscow tonight. We're here to interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. We'll be doing that soon. There are risks to conducting an interview like this, obviously, so we thought about it carefully over many months. Here's why we're doing it. First, because it's our job. We're in journalism. Our duty is to inform people. 2 years into a war that's reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed. They have no real idea what's happening in this region, here in Russia or 600 miles away in Ukraine.
Now the question for many is, was it right to interview Putin? Was it right that Tucker Carlson goes to Russia, goes to Moscow and try to speak with Putin and make an interview?
But they should know. They're paying for much of it in ways they might not fully yet perceive. The war in Ukraine is a human disaster. It's left hundreds of thousands of people dead, an entire generation of young Ukrainians, and it's depopulated the largest country in Europe. But the long-term effects are even more profound. This war has utterly reshaped the global military and trade alliances, and the sanctions that followed have as well. And in total, they have upended the world economy.
Well, he justified it, and the reasoning is perfectly understandable. A journalist has to question both sides. He has to report as neutrally as possible, so that people can make their own judgment. I even want to go a whole step further. It was an absolute necessity, because it was the only way to really have something for or against Putin, because he said publicly how he thinks and feels. It is also about a war that has already claimed hundreds of thousands of victims. Now everyone can decide and judge for themselves whether Putin was telling the truth or not, whether Putin's behavior is justified or not. I don't want to say anything more about this video section.
The post-World War II economic order, the system that guaranteed prosperity in the West for more than 80 years, is coming apart very fast, and along with it, the dominance of the US dollar. These are not small changes. They are history-altering developments. They will define the lives of our grandchildren. Most of the world understands this perfectly well. They can see it. Ask anyone in Asia or the Middle East what the future looks like. And yet the populations of the English-speaking countries seem mostly unaware. They think that as nothing has really changed. And they think that because no one has told them the truth.
Now the question for many is, was it right to interview Putin? Was it right that Tucker Carlson interviewed him? That he goes to Russia, that he goes to Moscow and speak with Putin? For me is one question more. What Jesus would do in our time today? Would Jesus speak with everyone or not? What he's done? What is standing in the Bible? What did Jesus do? My question.
Their media outlets are corrupt. They lie to their readers and viewers. And they do that mostly by omission. For example, since the day the war in Ukraine began, American media outlets have spoken to scores of people from Ukraine, and they have done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky, and we hope he accepts. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to amplify Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe and pay for it. That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Propaganda of the ugliest kind, the kind that kills people.
Well, he justified it, and the reasoning is perfectly understandable. A journalist has to question both sides. He has to report as neutrally as possible so that people can make their own judgment. I even want to go a whole step further. It was an absolutely necessity because it was the only way to really have something for or against Putin. I hope it was okay and you understand what I said. Because he said publicly how he thinks and feels. It is also about a war that has already claimed hundreds of thousands of victims. Now everyone can decide and judge for themselves whether Putin was telling the truth or not, whether Putin's behavior is justified or not. I don't want to say any more about this video section. He's already said it. It's not just small things that have happened in the world because of the war, because of Russia, because of Putin, because of the USA, because of Biden, because of sanctions. But a lot of things have been turned upside down. Yes, and many countries have gotten into serious economic difficulties, not least due to self-inflicted behavior because of the sanctions that were imposed. And they didn't harm Russia in particular, but rather their own countries, especially Germany.
At the same time, our politicians and media outlets have been doing this, promoting a foreign leader like he's a new consumer brand. Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin. Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice. That's wrong.
And why is that possible? Because politicians and their media spread lies, because they are corrupt and venal, both by the arms industry, Wall Street, the trillion-dollar asset managers, the IT companies, the large corporations. Power and money, these are the main goals of the powerful in today's world, as it has been since time immemorial.
Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in, and we have the right to tell them about it because we are Americans too. Freedom of speech is our birthright. We were born with the right to say what we believe. That right cannot be taken away no matter who is in the White House. But they're trying anyway. Almost 3 years ago, the Biden administration illegally spied on our text messages and then leaked the contents to their servants in the news media. They did this in order to stop a Putin interview that we were planning. Last month, we're pretty certain they did exactly the same thing once again. But this time, we came to Moscow anyway.
Omissions, half-truths, one-sided representations. These ultimately lead to lies, to false interpretations, to false conclusions. Yes, as he says here, it is propaganda of the ugliest kind. Why is something happening? Only when you have heard all sides, you can say that you have seriously come closer to the truth. Everything has a backstory, and only when you know them, you can understand what followed. And why shouldn't Putin mention this history? Why shouldn't we also ask him why his country started to act like this at the beginning of 2022? Freedom of expression applies to every person. Yes, to ourselves, to the Americans, to the Russians, to Tucker Carlson, and so on. Yes, and for Vladimir Putin too.
We are not here because we love Vladimir Putin. We are here because we love the United States, and we want it to remain prosperous and free. We paid for this trip ourselves. We took no money from any government or group, nor are we charging people to see the interview. It is not behind a paywall. Anyone can watch the entire thing, shot live to tape and unedited, on our website, tuckercarlson.com.
This is journalism, making the truth accessible to everyone, independent, unedited, uncensored, uncut, open and honest, and then to have the freedom to decide for yourself what you can believe and not believe. And yes, even want to believe. Freedom instead of slavery.
Elon Musk, to his great credit, has promised not to suppress or block this interview once we post it on his platform, X, and we're grateful for that. Western governments, by contrast, will certainly do their best to censor this video on other less principled platforms because that's what they do. They are afraid of information they can't control. But you have no reason to be afraid of it. We are not encouraging you to agree with what Putin may say in this interview, but we are urging you to watch it. You should know as much as you can. And then, like a free citizen and not a slave, you can decide for yourself. Thanks.